Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am Coach David Syvertsen. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee. Right now in the middle of dog days of summer. I want to tell you guys this. I would say 4 out of every 5 episodes that we record are stemming from situations at this gym, our experiences, right? Some of them are conversations that we have with you, like, oh, you guys should talk about X, Y, Z. Some of them are things that Sam has dealt with. Some of them are what I've dealt with from both a CrossFitter perspective, a coach perspective, owner perspective. And we want to make all these topics something that you guys can relate to, reflect on, right? It's not just like what Sam and I be like, hey, you want to talk about this tomorrow? Like, no, something happened at the gym a month ago, 3 weeks ago, or something keeps happening at the gym. Let's freaking talk about it, right? I think I reflect back on why did we start this podcast? You know, sometimes when it's like hard to schedule and like you're trying to put together an outline on a Saturday night for the Sunday morning recording, you know, you're trying to jam things in. And I love talking about it. I know Sam does too, but Sam does a lot of the background work. It's not a little amount of work. It takes time. And it's something I remember the reason we started it was that there are so many things that we want to talk about and teach people and reflect on with you guys that you just don't have time to talk about at the whiteboard, right? Like we can't talk about this on a whiteboard. If we send an email out, half the people aren't going to read it anyway. So about this subject. And this is something that has come to my quote table or discussion so many times over the past few months. And I was like, you know what? We got to do an episode on this because I know if these 10 people are asking about it, talking about it, I bet there are others as well. Or there will be future people that someday have to make a decision on what we're going to talk about. Today's topic is how young is too young to start CrossFit. And I have a 3-year-old, I'm going to give him a few years before I make him start coming.
What, he's not snatching tomorrow?
Yeah, he probably is. Sasha's 18?
Yeah.
Nick?
16.
16, so an 18, 16-year-old. And you learn a lot, right? Sam has a lot more life experience than I do. And no, not a knock on his age. If anything, it's a compliment to his age. And Sam has a lot of credibility on this subject because he's had kids go through this where, hey, I don't know when they should start, but they did. And they've both grown into quality athletes, quality movers. And I want to know, when should I start pushing fitness on Brock? Right? I'm trying to get him to stop eating 12 muffins a day. I think that's step one. Because
Good first step.
Before I start worried about his wall walks and muscle ups. But the amount of times that I've had someone come up to me, a parent, and I love that they're doing this because they're looking out for their kid, their future, their fitness, their health, in a world where most people don't do that. Hey, can my kid start CrossFit? Can you start training my kid? Can my kid come with me to class today? I've had that question come to me probably a dozen times in the past couple months. And in the years prior, even more than that. So this is something that's obviously a real strong sticking point to a lot of parents, that they want their kids to love fitness. They want their kids to exercise. They want their kids to eat well. And I think a lot of the parents want their kids to be around the people here. It is a really good group of people. I think about that all the time. It's a very unique. I think we're unbelievably lucky and blessed. What sets Bison apart? I'll tell you right now, it's the people that come here. And that's really what I would want my kid to be around, right? I'm going to be a little strict with that as he gets older, who he hangs out with and what he does on weekends and what he's doing. And I will want him to be in an environment like this. Sam, your kids started CrossFit, I want to say, either preteen. Both of them preteens?
Yeah, I had to look, and I found pictures of them
Nice.
Working out with Terry doing CrossFit Kids back in, it was like 2015, so Nick was 9 and Sasha was 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was the start. So there was Sam's answer. Now, Terry ran a really good CrossFit Kids program.
It was awesome.
For a couple of years.
Yeah.
She put a lot into it, had a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And just executed the classes very well. And if I remember correctly, she had 2 different age group classes. I think there was like some younger kids and then kids like that where they could probably do a little bit more. And that's a great way to start. And here we are 7-8 years later. If either one of them showed up to one of our classes, it's like any other member to me. Like they know what they're doing. They move well. They're respectful. They're nice. They're fit. They're good athletes too. That helps. That if I see them on a roster, I don't think twice about it. Talk about a little bit why you had them start that class. And then once that class was over, because it was only a summer operation, the CrossFit Kids class at Bison, where did you want to go from there?
I think for most people, they should be thinking about fitness in an overall standpoint. Like I see you with Brock, like he's pretty active for his age.
Nonstop.
And that's because you incorporate that into your life. Like you play ball with him. He's running around. He's going on that scooter thing. Like part of this as a parent, I think, is you're thinking about how am I incorporating fitness in my life where it's not I'm training fitness.
Right.
It's
I
life.
have to go to the gym.
Right. It's life. And so when we first started with our kids young, that's how we felt. We're like, we have to train fitness. So we took them to like gymborees, which a lot of people do for their little kids. Like you're like holding them on a balance beam and running up little ramps and all that.
Right.
And that's all totally fine. And if you look at CrossFit Kids, and I just took a quick peek at it lately to see what it talked about. And it said, like if you're in preschool, like you should, play with cones and ropes and balls and mats and, all those kind of things, because that's what, preschoolers will do. And then I think when our kids, just like most North Jersey parents, we ended up putting our kids into a ton of sports. Like they all started lacrosse at like age 5 and soccer, like kinder kickers and all those things. And we weren't really thinking about fitness per se. We were just thinking about sports and things that they would have fun doing. And they played a lot of sports at that age in grade school. So they tried pretty much every single
That's awesome.
kid sport. And I'm sure Brock is you're going to try him out on a lot of stuff, like, whatever it is. And I think that was helpful in terms of having them sort of see like just skill building.
Right.
Sasha gravitated towards soccer.
Yep.
And so she played soccer from a very early age. Nick couldn't really find what he really wanted to do. And for a while, actually, in middle school, we just kind of we're like, okay, we tried every sport under the sun.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work out.
Right.
I think he picked up basketball, but that was late middle school or early middle school maybe. And that was on his own. And I think that was honestly because he was playing so much NBA 2K. And he was like,
I believe it.
And so he's like, oh, this is something I want to start doing more in real life. And so now he's been playing and this is not like every kid is different, right? So we have so many kids, families at Bison, and we have some like levels of kids athletes, like where you go from like Kathleen's kid, and
Fisher,
Fisher, Deb Rourke's kid. Like these are, and most kid I think is rowing at Columbia, like very high level athletes.
Yep.
All the way down to just like very ordinary non-athletic kids.
Yep.
And I've seen you bring a lot of different kids in, and they've all worked out really well. Like Steve Rice has brought his son. I love him. Mike Gerald's kids, Tarleton's, Cher's.
Tarleton's entire family.
Yeah. I mean, Rob's kids have come in, especially his oldest daughter. She was an awesome athlete.
She was Sydney. Yep.
Yes. Mandy Hovig's kids now, like Mo's kids. So I can't speak for so many other families out there. And I just want to acknowledge that you've done really well integrating so many families into Bison.
Yep.
But I will say that once Terry started that class, and they were really good classes, it did build some fundamental things that are good for athletic development. You don't have to do them through CrossFit Kids. You probably could just get some of the equipment and do it.
Right.
But it was just nice to be in that kind of environment.
Yep.
Let me just start by saying, 1, every kid is different, and my kids are too.
Yep.
too. I had a lot of bumps, and we can talk about like some of the issues, and a lot of it was me as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And then third, like, they are their own people, and it's been so interesting to watch them develop as athletes and as fitness people, and they've done their own thing. I'm very proud of them, but it's not necessarily what I've done for them.
Right.
The biggest thing I think I've done as a parent, and I think all of us do as parents, is we set examples.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how many people I see on both sides where they don't walk the talk, don't talk the talk, and then they're like, why is my kid not doing what I want them to do? And then the opposite, where they're just living their life the way they're living, and their kid just sort of naturally kind of imbibes that.
Yep.
And maybe it doesn't come out exactly the right or the way you would expect, but that is so important, that every aspect of your life that you can work on and show in, realistically and honestly does come back to your kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the kids
Including
are
CrossFit.
Yeah, the kids are going to follow you. What your parents do, always to a point, right? Eventually they become their own person. I promise I don't eat 12 muffins a day. He does not get that from me. But when you have this question, right, of someone saying, "Can my kid join classes?" Right, your initial impression is like, "That's awesome." Like I do. Like I love seeing the parents there with their kids. I'm envious of it, and I can't wait to do that myself. That's got to be just like a different level of connection. And some parents are honest about it. They're like, yeah, I want them to work out, but like I want something to do with them. Like I want us to do this together. I want us to have like this experience together of going to this gym and working out, and we go home and we talk about the workouts, right? That's a big part of it too. And when I think about whether or not a kid should join the gym, it has nothing to do with business, which is another probably shortcoming as a business owner. Because if I just said yes to everyone that wanted to be a member at this gym, I bet we could have 40 more members tomorrow. And do some math on there, that would be some money that would help change things a little bit, right? But I go down are they physically ready as much as are they mentally ready? And this is where I think there is a disconnect between some parents and some and some gym owners with, hey, I would love to help them out physically. Let's get them training for their next football season, their next lacrosse season. But are they mentally ready to come in? And it's essentially like a school class, maybe like a gym class on steroids, right? Where you have an instructor, you have to listen. You can't joke around to a point, right? You have to be respectful. You have to do what you're told, right? I mean, yeah, CrossFit classes are fun, and we're all adults here. We're not too controlling with a lot of that stuff. But with kids, you kind of have to be, because my biggest fear, and I would say a number I'd put on anyone under than 16 years old, is when they train here, I'm really always fearful they're going to get hurt. I don't, and trust me, parents, I don't want to see you get hurt either. But there's a lot of like just mature decision making that you'll make as an adult that kids just don't have yet. They're not fully developed yet. Are there kids, Sasha being one of them, more mature than others? Yeah, but she's not fully developed adult yet. She still has to go through a lot of life experiences to get to that point where you can be like, you know what, go make your own decision. But once she comes, I still kind of like, hey, do this weight. Like don't worry about going this way. Don't worry about the RX, right? But when I see like a new, fresh 13, 14, 15-year-old, I almost have anxiety when I'm coaching them in a big class, especially, that I don't want them to not play in their soccer season because they have a stress fracture in their foot from working out, or they hurt their back doing a deadlift. And this is one of my biggest struggles, is that I can't talk to a parent without knowing who their kid is and say yes or no. You can't. I know some 12-year-olds that are better developed and ready for this than 16, 17-year-olds. So we have come up with a rule here at Bison, and even that, like, it's a little flexible, that we say if you're 14, you're allowed to come work out, but one of your parents has to be there with you in class. And once you're 16, you can start coming in on your own, / the parent doesn't need to stay or work out. And I'm going to tell you why we're doing this, and it has more to do with the mental and emotional than the physical. The mental and emotional stuff here, songs with bad words in it, people cursing, people screaming, a lot of intensity in the gym based on the day and who's there. Are they going to be intimidated by that? Are they going to be so insecure? I can't tell you how many times I see a kid, going for a heavy clean, we don't let them max out, and they're looking at me as they're doing the lift to see if they're doing it right. They're not concentrating on the lift. They're not concentrating on their knuckles and their shrug and their stable core. I had someone recently, we're going overhead, push pressing overhead. The back is way overextended because they're looking at me, watch them lift. They're not confident enough to or focused enough to just hey, I got to do this movement correctly. And those are the positions that people get into that can cause an injury at some point. I have another kid who, we have had kids over the past, they can't pick the bar up off the ground without around the back. They cannot do it. They're strong enough to move the weight, but there's this they're not focusing on it. They're just trying to get the bar to the shoulder. And when I'm looking at it from the side, I'm like, that is bad. And I know that kid won't get hurt today, tomorrow, next week, the next month. But in a few years, John Hartman, when did he get hurt? As a freshman in high school.
Yeah, doing
95-pound power clean.
That's exactly right.
So don't tell me this, they're so limber and they're bulletproof. They're not. And now John Hartman probably still has had years of issues from that back injury as a 9th grader. I don't want to touch that. So that's why sometimes I have had thoughts saying 18 and older only. I'm not going to do it, but I have gone down that path for that reason.
It really, some of it is coachability. So I think about my kids and how they've progressed. So they didn't really pick up a barbell until, you don't start CrossFit kids to just pick up barbells and start doing stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's usually kettlebells, med balls, all that sort of stuff. They started picking up barbells, I want to say when Sasha she did the Bison Bowl at age 13. Wow. So that was 2017. Okay. And it was both her and Staun's kid. And I remember that. Their form wasn't awesome actually.
Yeah. Not great. Yeah.
But if they're coachable, you can get them through that around that age.
Right.
It just takes time. I remember even 2 or 3 years ago with Nick, on back squats and stuff, it's some of it is how well are they coachable and how well do they know their body. So when I was teaching him, we have a garage gym, and so that's also another thing. As a family, they use it all the time now actually on their own, because one of the things is that when they Sasha doesn't mind coming to class right now on her own because she is now an adult. And so, in her mind, and so and so she can drive herself and come here.
Yeah.
But for a lot of kids, working out with your parents is oh my God, I got to work out with my old ass parents and their old ass people. In the class, if it was a bunch of young people, it'd be different.
Yep.
But when I was sort of coaching him through back squats and stuff, he would round his back, and not because he couldn't do it right. He just didn't know.
Right.
So a lot,
awareness.
Right. So a lot of this is at that age, repetition and understanding it. And I don't think you should necessarily be throwing barbells on kids pre-adolescence. They don't have enough ability to develop strength before puberty.
Right.
So you could go through the motions if you wanted to, but you're not going through any meaningful amount of weight.
Right.
Once they start hitting adolescence and getting in that, you should be coaching barbell for them. Strength training for sure. And I'm sure a lot of these kids in sports are doing that.
Yep.
But it's really about form, technique, and making sure it's good. Because like you said, at that age, it doesn't matter how limber you are going to get hurt. So I think that is so critical, especially young boys. They just want to lift as heavy as you possibly can.
Yeah, it's in their blood. They just want to go fast and hard and heavy.
And you really have to moderate that. And
so here's another thing that makes me feel responsibility, because we do, in my opinion, we do a pretty good job here, the coaches, of really knowing what quality movement is.
Yeah.
Not demanding it.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be perfect, but we know hey, that's not going to work. And I'll have parents send me videos of kids at Fitness 19, no personal trainers, just a bunch of boys going to Fitness 19 and doing deadlifts, and it's bad.
Yeah.
And I'm almost you know what? They need me, or they need the gym, right? They need me. They need someone to really watch them and correct them. And if you don't, those kids will get hurt at some point.
Or hurt others. I remember there was a high school kid that came and was lifting on the rack and didn't realize, really nice kid, and I'm sure you'll remember this, had 245s on one side of the barbell, took them off, and that barbell flipped, nearly took out, I think it was Kristen Blake, almost killed her, literally.
Could have done damage.
Would have hit her head as hard as you could.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, not intentional.
No.
Just he didn't know that taking off leaving 245s on one side is going to cause it.
Never been to the gym before, never done it before.
Right. And so it's not only, so when parents are like, well, my kid's okay. Listen, it's not only for your kid's safety, it's for everybody else's safety too.
And, the whole, like, my kid's ready, my kid's different, my kid's gifted. I mean, I'll probably be the same way with Brock. Everyone thinks their kid's like a superstar. I could say this. I've been at Bison for 10 years. I've had, that probably said to me, I want to say 50 times, like, oh, my kid's a little different. Like, they're a little bit more developed. I think I've had one kid where that was actually the truth. So I would just assume that your kid's not different. I think that's something important. Hey, your kid's good at a sport. That's different than being able to come here and stabilize barbells. So I think you should remove yourself from that line of saying my kid's different. It's kind of irrelevant, and it's probably not true. And I think that should stay away from the decision-making process of should your kid be involved in a class or not. Here's another thought. Your kid's going to be sharing a bathroom with grown men. Your kid's going to be in a room where people take their clothes off pretty much every day here at the gym in the summer. And are they emotionally ready? Is a teenage boy, hormones raging, starting to find some things about themselves? Are they cool with, like, 6 girls taking their shirts off and workout? Can they still stay focused on their actual workout? I'll tell you what, as a 14-year-old boy, I don't think I would have been able to.
I'm so old, I did not even think about this.
And like that stuff, like, I've seen that. I observe everything when I coach. I've seen teenage boys staring at a girl doing a deadlift right in front of them. I'm like, God, come on, God. Like,
honestly, I've seen 60-year-old dudes do that.
That's true. It's just, God, it's a dude thing. But they don't have that awareness sometimes that if you're not fully focused on what you're doing, do they even know what full focus is at these days with the amount of, like, tablets and iPads and, growing trends of ADHD? It's like, can they really truly focus on what they're doing? And if not, like, can they focus on a coach talking about midline stability on toes to bar to protect your shoulder for 3 minutes? I bet they can't. I bet a lot of kids can't. I bet they zone out at some point. Some adults do it. But again, we're not talking about the adults here. You're an adult. You make your decision. You want to zone out, get hurt, go for it. I care about the kid not getting hurt more than you do. I don't want to set up the rest of their life with a bad shoulder because they just didn't have the mental capacity and awareness that they need to focus and work on techniques. And so this is where it comes back to, what age is it appropriate? And there isn't an age, because there are 12-year-olds that can do it. There are 16-year-olds that can't do it. So what is the solution here? My best solution is a lot of communication with parents. That's part one. And then part two, probably smaller group training that is geared towards those people. So this summer, I'm only doing for the summer, is I'm running a teen class. I've had a class of 11 people. I've had a class of 1. The average class is about 5 to 7 kids. And we do kind of like an extended warm-up, like a hard warm-up, get them out of breath, body weight, but we're teaching movement. We do a strength session. We've done strict press, push rest, back squat, deadlift. And then we do like a mixed modal workout at the end. Okay, pretty standard CrossFit type programming. Nothing heavy, nothing that hard. But I push them a little bit, especially the kids. There's a 14-year-old in there that's pretty good. And in that environment with 5 kids, it's really easy to, like, make sure, like, when we do our strength sessions, we go around the rack. I have 1 kid lift at a time. It's not like, hey guys, 5x5 like we do for Bison. It's like, you go, okay, you go, okay, you go. You can't do that in a class of 26 people. I had a 14-year-old girl at a class last week with 26 people in class. Snatch. And you had to stand there the whole time, basically. So I didn't coach anyone in that class, and it kind of sucks. And that's another thing I want parents to think about, is it's not just about your kid come to the class. Is it safe? It's if they come to class, I bet that 25 other people in that class are not going to get the attention they deserve.
There are a lot of kids. The exception proves the rule. And I'm thinking about these kids in class, and I would say the 2 best that I've ever seen were Luke Fisher.
Yep.
And Sydney Scherer.
Yeah.
Like those 2.
Both from Glen Rock.
Yeah. Great athletes, both varsity, whatever, like in their sports. They would come, they would WOD. Like, it was, I just remember running next to Sydney, getting smoked by Sydney.
Yeah.
On the runs, and then getting smoked by Luke on the lifts. And those 2 were such mature, wonderful athletes to work out with. And I keep forgetting that they were in high school at the time.
Yeah.
And so if you have a kid like that, it's an awesome experience. But like you said, not every kid is going to be that way.
Right. They kind of set the tone / open the door for us.
They did.
As like, you know what? Yeah, we could do this with teens. We had Kirsten Skeed back then, if you remember her. She was even younger.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think Kayla was actually that much older.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
So it does depend on the individual. I think as a parent, does your kid gravitate towards it, lean towards it? Like Sasha does.
Right.
And I'll tell you a little bit about Nick and Sasha's experiences. But if they don't really love it, boy, don't make it one of those things that they're going to hate you for it.
Yeah.
And that's really one of those things as a parent I've learned sometimes the hard way to like not like I've made that mistake a little bit.
Yeah.
And we all know the pushy parent, the parent who make like just because it's good for them doesn't mean that they want to do it.
Right.
And it's a little bit of a give and take with some of this stuff, right? It's great if your kid loves it, wants to do it, enjoys it. If they don't, like with my kids, I never made them go to class all the time, but fitness was part of our life. So if we were vacationing or something, we would work out with them. Not all the time, but sometimes. Now more, because they're older.
When you say work out, you're like hotel gym?
Yeah, hotel gym, like...
Sometimes a CrossFit or no?
The last one, when we went to Korea, we did. And then on holidays, so this was sort of our holiday thing that we did was, I used to post this stuff, which we'll talk about in social media at some point in the future about bragging and whatever. But we would work out in the garage, and we would do one of those like rotating station type things, and someone would do kettlebell, someone would do sit-ups, someone would be doing push press, and we would do that for our Thanksgiving or Christmas or 4th of July or whatever, especially during COVID. Like, and then so we would work out together. So it was a thing. They knew. The last couple of years they've done the open. I think the key as a parent, and I've had two sort of recent like teaching moments for me, was not to be too pushy or maybe too pushy.
What about, when you say pushy, do you mean like coachy? Like you coach them?
No, like lose my temper.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So the bottom line is, if you ever find yourself not making it a positive experience for your kids, like
it could turn them out.
Right. And fortunately, I've had way more positive experiences with them than negative, and they have done it enough that they do enjoy it. At this point, Nick does do it. Like, for example, Sasha will drop in and WODs. Nick will often WOD in the garage now, but he'll do it like, and I actually worked out with him a couple more times after that in the hotel gym. Yep. And he looks at me as a resource. Like,
sure.
He knows I know how to back squat. He knows I know how to bench. He knows like form and technique are important. I put together WODs for him, and now he putters around in the gym. He'll do GHDs, and he'll run a mile or two on the air runner.
That's awesome.
He'll do bench, plyometrics, like box jumps, and on his own.
And that's like, you love hearing that. You know, it's a kid kind of taking the initiative to work out on your own. And like, honestly, I didn't start living like that till I was 22.
Right.
The fact that he's doing it now is going to be huge for him.
And some of it is also that he does go to the Y sometimes with his friends.
Yeah. And
so that drives him too. Like, as a teenage boy, a lot of it is not so much your parents, it's your peers.
Yes.
And so, but the fact that he has this foundation of knowledge that we've given him about how to do these things, I think has helped him a lot. And I think he's actually, comparatively speaking to some of these kids, like pretty good.
Right.
I mean, they're not like Matt Frazier or something, but
right.
But so
that's what he's doing though.
Right. And that's what I'm just glad that he has at this point. And I think as a parent, if you can say, listen, my kids learn this from me, they enjoy it, I'm walking the walk, and I think that's what a lot of CrossFitters at our gym do, is they just want to walk the walk so their kids do. I was just talking to Kelly Cavan.
Yep.
Not Kyle.
Yes.
Kelly.
Kyle who?
And how she has young kids around 10, I think now. And, and they see her fitnessing and wanting to get into it. Mm-hmm. Listen, is that a great age to start?
Yeah. Starting to get the foundation.
Foundational stuff.
Now, here's the question about that situation in relation to Kelly's daughter.
Yeah.
Right? She did like a little personal training session with Mike. Okay. Very one-on-one.
Yeah.
And programmed for her with a coach watching, modifications, good technique. She throws her into a class of 18 people at 9:30 on a Wednesday with pull-ups, dumbbell snatch, burpees, jump rope, and cleans. It's not going to be the same experience.
Of course not.
And it could actually turn her away from like, oh, dude, at that time I went to CrossFit, it sucked. You know, like there was too much going on. The coach didn't pay enough attention to me. And I think my solution to this stuff, and it's not something I can always provide because of schedule, right, is I think they need more personal attention. You know, like I had one group of boys that I worked with when they were like 13, 14, 15.
That was tough for you.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
I will get into that one though.
Okay.
So this is exactly what I was going to go to. This one's the positive one.
Okay.
It was Staunton, Ross, Phelps.
Oh yeah. Those are good.
Those boys just like good kids too, but
also very talented athletes.
Very talented. But working with them, it was nice because it was just the three of us, and I could change things on the fly. I didn't have to disappear for 5 minutes and go take care of these people and then come back to them. You know, it was personal attention. Now, the problem is economics come into it. Like, it costs more than a gym membership.
It does.
And it does. And you try to work with people the best you can, but you do at some point have to draw a line. And I loved working with them. Over the course of a couple of years, we probably worked with each other, I don't know, 40, 50 times. One of them is a Division I lacrosse player. And the other one, I just found out, is like setting records at Ridgewood High School for like back squat, deadlift, and bench press.
Get
the total.
Yeah. Really?
And I was like, and I, out of all those kids I worked with, did not expect that. But again, what advantage does he have? I mean, I'm sure he got bigger. Again, adolescence, things start changing. He knew how to do it. I bet he knows how to deadlift and squat more than most of the kids that do that.
Yeah.
So like that foundation helped him. I'm not saying it was Dave that helped him. I'm just saying that little background kind of like opened the door that a lot of kids don't get to open. So then you go down this guilt trip train of like, man, I got to do this for every kid now. And you just can't. You can't say yes to everyone. But I think a parent out there where if you're on the fence, I think that's got to be probably an investment at some point on your end, that they're probably going to need more personal attention than what a CrossFit class would provide. Or you find a gym with class sizes of 3 to 5 at a time. And even at this gym, I mean, summer's always weird. We have a random like 15-person class at 11 a.m. sometimes, but those midday classes, they're quiet. And a lot of times the question I have or the conversation I have with a parent is like, hey, if you want your kid to come, I think you got to find the smallest class possible.
Yeah.
11 a.m., 12 p.m., 7:15 p.m. That's where they'll really learn and have a watchful eye, where I'm honest about this. If they're in a class of 24, I can't watch them as much as you probably want me to. So, that's where I kind of like, on the flip side of that, the reason I think that is I did have 3 teenagers, no parent affiliation with the gym at all. Like literally got dropped off after school and hopped into the 415 class, which can get 20 people at the snap of a finger. And they were really, really low-level physical and mental concentration ability. And we were at a point where whoever was coaching the 415 class coached the 415, and then I would come in for that class, or Liz and my kids on this, they just stayed there with those 3 kids the entire time.
Wow.
And we didn't put it on the payroll. We just did it. We just volunteered to do it. And we were thinking in our head, like, all right, if we do this enough times, they'll eventually be ready for class. And guys, we did this for like 2 months, and they weren't ready. And that was a point. That's when we changed our rule here, that if you're not 16, you're not come to the gym unless your parents
It's
do.
not that they're bad kids. Everyone develops at different ages and rates and stages.
And I'll say that I probably wouldn't have done this. I probably couldn't have done this when I was 14 without a really watchful eye, personal training, my parent being there.
Mm-hmm.
And, there weren't behavior issues so much. I mean, kids joke around, but like, so do I. So whatever. That's like Sam yells at me for joking around sometimes in his classes. Never going to forget that.
Be quiet, Dave.
I've been very well behaved since that. So, to wrap this up, I want to, if you aren't really thinking about this from a kid perspective, we can stay in the same church and go to a different pew here. How obese is too obese to start CrossFit? How old is too old to start CrossFit? How unfit is too unfit to start CrossFit? It's the same discussion, if you think about it, as the teens. So I know a lot of you guys are like, dude, I don't have kids, or dude, my kids are 30, don't care about this topic. You might come across a family member at some point. I thought about this with my parents. My dad's going to turn 70 next year.
How old is too old to start CrossFit?
I don't think there is a number, but just like there isn't a number for kids. But I wouldn't want him getting thrown into a class at CrossFit Pennsylvania, right? I would want to make sure he has personal attention. And he is doing some physical therapy type training coming up for an issue that he has. But that is so like individual. Someone's watching you, someone's modifying, someone's tracking your individual results for you. I wouldn't want him to show up to a class at 5 a.m. I would not feel good about that. And, you know, we've had some people drop into the gym, try it out for the first time, and very, very unfit, meaning couldn't run 200 meters. Can't do an air squat. Can't do a burpee. You know, can't do push-ups. Are we going to shut the door on that person? No, we won't, especially adults. But I do think people in that tier, and it could be subjective, and coaches have credibility on this, are they actually going to be able to safely coach this person in a class of 15 to 20? I think there are certain groups of people, age, too old, fitness levels, too unfit, that they should probably get more personal attention first before being thrown into a class where they sometimes get attention. That's kind of like my answer. Yeah, I've done CrossFit with people in wheelchairs before, CrossFit Hoboken. There was a guy in a wheelchair that did CrossFit. He was actually a badass too. Like there were things he could do that none of us could do with his upper body. So I don't think you can shut the door on anyone. And CrossFit HQ has this messaging out there that anybody in the world can walk in and do CrossFit. And that's very easy to say from a big company perspective because it looks good, it sounds good, and they want to get to 20 to 30 million people. Okay, so
That's right.
A little bit of an agenda there.
That's what he said.
But you want to throw someone like that into my class of 24 people at 5 a.m.? You really think that's a good idea? I don't think you think that's a good idea.
No, I don't think so at all. And I just, as a coach, that would be my biggest nightmare. It's hard enough to have a beginner in a class.
Especially multiple.
Right. Your brain goes haywire as a coach.
Yep.
But to have someone whose capabilities are such that they're so limited that they're actually at risk, like, you know,
right,
physically for like like you said, they need personalized attention for a while. The minimum that we do is like that on-ramp.
Yep.
I know,
yeah,
right.
That's more like teaching how to do movements.
Right, but it's sort of an assessment too. Like you assess athletes and you send that out and you let us know as coaches like the capabilities or the goals of anyone who's sort of starting. But yeah, like I don't know. Like if my father was starting CrossFit tomorrow, boy, that'd be hard.
It would be hard.
I would say, listen, Dad, you have to like work with, if not me, somebody for a while because I don't think you would do well in a group environment.
It's like they're on the other side of the spectrum. Like I don't want a little kid to get hurt. I don't want a senior citizen to die. You know, do you remember at 6 a.m. that guy Tom, glasses, motorcycle? He had like,
oh yeah,
he was 71.
Yeah,
when he was started with us,
wow.
And like he was a fit 71.
Yeah,
much like very fit 71, but he was still like in class. And that was, again, why was it easier back then with Luke Fisher and Sydney? Classes were 6 people.
Yeah, it was really small.
It just and I think that's where the disconnect is I think some people have been here for a long time. Hey, now my kids are 12. Like you let that person's kid. Well, our classes were 6 people back then. They're 29 now, and it's a different vibe. It's a different feel for a coach, and it's all coming from the safety component.
Yeah.
It's not, it's going to make my job harder. Yeah. Like, no, it's a safety thing. If we were just here for the money, we would open the door to everyone. I'd be at a senior citizen center tomorrow saying, hey, come join my 6 a.m. class that only has 29 out of 30 spots filled. You know, like come take that last spot. Give me your money, right? But we want to keep people safe. That's like one of our number one things. We care about that more than your scores. We care about that more than like your aesthetics of your body. Can you do this safely? And it's really hard to do that with a certain age group where you can come up with 10 different really dangerous points. Everyone, think about your parents doing this right now. It is the same discussion as your kids. As the young kids.
If my dad came, it would be like taking my 12-year-old son to class. I would be right next to him,
right.
working out with him.
It's funny how that works, right? Yeah.
Like that would be what I would be doing.
That's what Nick and Sasha are going to be doing for you in 10 years.
Probably. Dad, take that weight off the bar. That's way too heavy. Dad, stop. It's karma.
But those are good food for thought there. I do, all of you parents that have talked to me about it, whether it's personal training, the teen class, can they hop into classes? I would say most coaches probably think the way I do about this. Love the idea on paper, on surface level, but I think that the risks and communication that is needed in between the athlete, parent, and coach probably are not being fully understood by the parent, because especially with a gym like this where it's just big and crowded and intense, I don't ever want to say no to someone, but I do think at some point, and I have told a couple parents in the past, I don't think your kid's ready for it, that it's going to be okay if we make them wait another year or two.
Shout out to the Harringtons. Their 2 daughters are awesome.
Yes.
So every time you say that, I say agree. There are the exceptions that are to the rule. Yeah. And I think if we keep looking for those parents, kids, coaches, athletes that are like that work well together, right, it can be amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think Bison has done it as well as anyone. But I think your experiences and your caution is something that's really important to note.
Right. And I'm never shutting the door. If I say I don't think they're ready, it could be next year that they're ready. And I think it's something that it's okay if we push just kick the can down a road, because a lot, you've seen this with your kids, a lot happens in a year, every year. Like every time you see someone posts a picture of first day of school, last day of school pictures, it's like, it's amazing how much kids change in a 9-month period. That, I want to make sure that we do it at the right time and we have the right resources and or situation for that kid to really truly be ready to get the most out of this, because all of us have said this in the past. We wish we started this when we were younger. Oh, yeah. So like if we started this when we were 15, like probably be like games athlete, but like the benefits, we know starting early, there's going to be a benefit, but I do think there's a line of being too early in relation to a CrossFit class. And it's okay to kick the can down the road for a year or two based on your kid's situation. So don't be short-term greedy, think long-term. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.